The new CEO of FTX is John Ray, and he blames what he calls, quote, grossly inexperienced individuals for the FTX collapse. Watch this.
The FTX group's collapse appears to stem from absolute concentration of control in the hands of a small group of grossly inexperienced and unsophisticated individuals who failed to implement virtually any of the systems or controls that are necessary for a company entrusted with other people's money or assets.
Vivek Ramaswamy back with me this morning. Vivek, how is it possible that inexperienced individuals, including a leader dressed like a homeless person, should bring in literally billions of dollars? How is this possible?
It's possible because it was a young company that was well-funded, and it created this veneer of virtue around it. I think the most remarkable part of the story that I saw, Stuart, was the fact that this was a company that a famous ESG ratings firm assigned a leadership and governance score that was higher to FTX than to ExxonMobil. So I think it's partly the fact that he cultivated this veneer of virtue, this patina of morality that made everyone flock behind him, but turned the other way when it came to looking at the obvious facts staring them in plain sight, which is this is not a firm that people should have entrusted with large amounts of their assets, but they looked the other way because he said the right things and did the so-called right things along the way. That's the moral of the story.
Well, do you think that Silicon Valley has, the venture capitalist business, have they learned their lesson?
You know, I would like to say they have, but the reality is I don't think they have, because what's happened over the course of the last decade and a half, Stuart, is we've just had an excess amount of capital to be invested. Money raining from on high like manna from heaven, printed by the Federal Reserve, creating added risk-taking behavior. No doubt that's actually spawned some innovative companies, but it has also loosened the standard that many venture firms have used to select and vet their investments. And I thought one of the most interesting things about the prosecution is that it actually, one of the charges related to defrauding those investors, including those Silicon Valley investors and firms like BlackRock who invested in FTX. Well, I think there's an equal mirror image question of how much accountability those investors in FTX, the firm, ought to bear for what happened due to failures in due diligence.
Vivek, earlier this morning we had former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the show, and he says, look, you got to ban TikTok nationwide. Just do it. Knock them off. Get rid of them. What do you say to banning TikTok nationwide?
Yeah, I've spoken to Mike about this as well. I think it makes good sense in the case of TikTok. This is not about domestic protectionism. This is about addressing a national security issue. What China is doing is they're using companies, TikTok included, as Trojan horses to collect data, including on the next generation of Americans, but using that for geopolitical ends. But here's what I'll say, Stuart, is that by just focusing on TikTok, we make a mistake, because this is something that China is doing across the board, not just with Chinese companies, but even with U.S. companies. You take a look at the Wall Street Journal reporting on what Airbnb turns over on U.S. user data to the CCP as a condition for doing business there. That, too, is just one more example. And I hope that this is not just a lightning rod of a TikTok issue, but the beginning of opening our eyes to the fact that China does not view companies as companies. They view them as just pawns in their broader geopolitical game. We in America have been deluding ourselves into thinking that we're participating just in a system of free market global capitalism, not realizing that it's a mercantilist system that mixes in geopolitical ends on the other side of the Pacific. And I hope this is just the tip of that iceberg in us waking up to that phenomenon.
It's a new and raging Cold War, if you ask me. Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for being with us again. Always appreciated, sir. See you soon.
Thank you.